It's hard to be a hero. There used to be a time where there was a clear line between good and evil, as clear as black and white, whether it was video games, movies, cartoons, or even pro wrestling. There was always a good guy and a bad guy. This was a time where storytelling in visual media was still new, still unexplored, still simple. But somewhere as the time passed, the line started to become grey, and the stories became more complex, more nuanced. But I still think that the hero character remains the most interesting to me. I mean, sure, who doesn't love a good villain? It seems normal now to make the villain somewhat likable. But I remember there was a time where villains were hated by the masses, and it was seen as sort of counterculture to actually want the villain to win. Then it all changed slowly over time, where even heroes now have villainous tendencies. But villains exist for a reason. They exist to be the conflict of the story, an obstacle for the hero to overcome. It was an effective way to show people to stand on their morals and belief. When did the hero stop inspiring the people to conquer their demons? I mean, heroes are supposed to be the symbols of peace, hope, and justice. They represent the best of humanity at the worst of times. They save the day when all seems lost. But how do they continue after a bad day? How can they sustain being the symbol of justice? I mean, surely they have their own ambitions, their own dreams they want to achieve, their own relationships to maintain. But when you think of a hero, you think of selflessness, someone who's willing to sacrifice themselves to save others. None of this seems easy. I mean, what happens when people get used to the novelty? What happens when the hero don't make the news anymore? What happens when there's no more praise for the heroic deeds? When it starts being expected and not appreciated? That is what we're going to explore in this video. The idea of being a hero and why it is way harder than you think it is. No one is forced to be a hero, but anyone can choose to be one. Some of us feel like being a hero every now and then, but not all the time. And this is not a judgment on anyone, but sometimes we look away, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you are just powerless to actually do something significant. Like even if you tried, it won't change anything. But what if you actually had the power to change things? Whether it be with something fictional like super strength, or something real like having a lot of money. If you had the tools to change the world for the better, would you? Me personally, I don't know if I actually would. I feel like I would try to do the right thing, but my own desires and laziness would kick in. I think I would take days off every now and then, honestly. But you always read about the adventures of Spiderman and Superman or Batman, and it is presented in a way like they do it every day with no days off. I'm sure they also have a life to live, as Peter Parker, Clark Kent, or Bruce Wayne, respectively. But all of them have shared a characteristic. They all chose to be heroes. To illustrate this point further, I want to look back at a series called My Hero Academia. There's a moment in the very beginning where Izuku Midoriya is faced with a reality, where he finds himself in a world where the majority of people have superpowers named quirks, and they become ranked both on power and popularity. At the top of the list is the number one hero, All Might, the symbol of justice. Young Midoriya sees the debut of his new hero. He becomes obsessed and vows to be just like him in the future. He grows up thinking that when he comes of age, he will receive his powers just like his friends did, but he receives news that this will never happen, and he has to accept that he is one of the 20% of people who was born without a quirk. Despite this, Midoriya keeps an optimistic outlook on life, analyzing different heroes, their abilities, personalities, and possible weaknesses. On his way from school one day, he witnesses villains attack a crowd of people, even managing to capture one of his friends, Bakugo. And even though Bakugo is more powerful than Midoriya with his explosive quirk, Midoriya sees Bakugo in danger, and against his better judgment, he runs to save him. Bakugo is shocked by Midoriya's stupidity. However, at that moment, All Might needed a distraction to power up, and Midoriya just gave it to him. All Might saves the day and later finds Midoriya, who's shocked to find his hero as a smaller, more fragile man. All Might tells Midoriya that he too was born quirkless, and he has the power of one for all, the only quirk that can be passed down from one person to another. He says that Midoriya possesses one trait that all great heroes have. Their bodies moved on its own to save people in danger before they could even think. This is the definition of courage. Doing something anyway, even if you fear it. Besides courage, there is also mercy. The decision to spare people even if you can destroy them. Powerful characters like Superman and Spiderman can easily do what they want with almost no consequences. Yet, they choose to save people and actively try to make the world a better place. The point is, being a hero starts with a choice. With great power comes great responsibility. I'm sure you've heard this quote 1,000 times, made famous by Uncle Ben in Spider-Man 1. And like thousands of other remarkable quotes, there is a lot of wisdom that is short and repeatable, yet still profound. Power is very dangerous in the wrong hands, and it can cause a lot of people to suffer. One example is in the same movie, Peter willingly letting a criminal go, and that decision gets Uncle Ben killed. This decision forces Peter to bear this guilt, and in turn makes him a better hero. Another example is the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff. She willingly enslaved an entire town to live in an altered reality based on a sitcom fantasy with a fabricated husband who was killed by Thanos and fake children that do not exist. This causes immense psychological trauma to the townspeople. Not to mention that she actively tries to manipulate the multiverse to find a reality where children actually exist, killing a lot of people along the way, even trying to steal the life of a version of her who actually had children. Eventually, she realizes that she has been corrupted by the Darkhold, a powerful book of evil magic. She also realizes that she has been blinded by her grief of losing vision, no pun intended. She then sacrifices herself to destroy the Darkhold. Great power comes with great responsibility. You either die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain. Some men just want to see the world burn. These two quotes are from the legendary Dark Knight movie by Christopher Nolan, where he deconstructs what it truly means to be a hero, where the main villain, the Joker, is the polar opposite of Batman, and it is also implied that he would not exist if Bruce Wayne had not put on the mask. And Joker desperately wants to break Batman because he sees him as a worthy adversary to conquer. This dynamic has been talked about in countless of YouTube videos, but the reason it keeps being discussed is because it's a real world dilemma. Most people would look at the Joker and immediately realize that he is truly irredeemable and should be put down like a dog. But Batman spares him over and over again, even though he shows no signs of rehabilitation or remorse. Because Batman is the protector of Bruce Wayne, an alternate personality, a person that will preserve life at all costs, because he does not want to be like the person who killed his parents. And the villains are smart enough to realize this, so they become more ambitious with their crimes, causing a lot of suffering that would have been avoided if someone like Batman took them out permanently. Another noteworthy villain is Killmonger from Black Panther. Spoilers for Black Panther. Killmonger was created when he saw his father killed by the Black Panther, T'Chaka, who also happens to be his father's brother, and the father of T'Challa, the current Black Panther and King of Wakanda. After years of training to become one of the deadliest mercenaries in the world, Killmonger decides to go back to his father's homeland of Wakanda, where he challenges T'Challa for the throne. Killmonger defeats T'Challa, and he becomes the new king of Wakanda. And his first order as king, to take over the world, to rule with an iron fist, to make sure that the sun never sets on the Wakandan Empire. He wants to weaponize Wakanda's advanced technology against the colonizers of the old world. This is a result of Wakanda choosing to hide its true power and choosing not to help with the oppression of black people all over the world. And so, Killmonger becomes a consequence of that decision. The last villain I want to discuss is Madara Uchiha. Spoilers for Naruto Shippuden. After years of fighting, Madara, the leader of the Uchiha, and Hashirama, the leader of the Senju, finally decide to end the bloodshed of a long-standing war and unite as a new village. The village hidden in the leaves, also known as Konoha. It would become a democracy and elect a new leader, known as the Hokage. Ultimately, Hashirama is elected as the Hokage, but he assures Madara that he would be his successor. However, after a few years, Hashirama's younger brother, Tobirama, was chosen instead. This is when Madara realized that Konoha will never accept an Uchiha as the Hokage. So he defected and decided to implement the Infinite Tsukiyomi, the most powerful illusion ever created that allows everyone under its spell to experience their wildest dreams as a reality. This is a plan that Madara worked on for decades, and he even returned from the dead to complete his mission. The only flaw of this technique is that it will drain the life force of everyone who remains under the spell. But it didn't matter, because to Madara, this was the only solution for world peace, and he would rather end the world than see it face war again. Everyone experiences loss in this life, and heroes are no different. Batman loses both of his parents in one night. This eventually defines his whole identity as Batman, a protector, someone who makes sure that the streets remain safe so that no one else has to go through what he went through. Spiderman loses his Uncle Ben, who instills in him the responsibility to help those who cannot help themselves. Superman loses a home world with all of his people, leaving him as the last son of Krypton. And despite his godlike abilities, he chooses to help the Earthlings instead of taking over by force, showcasing true mercy. Preserving life because his people no longer exist, and because he has seen the good in humanity by being raised by the Kents. All of the great heroes loses the ones closest to them, and they never forget it, but they do rise above the pain, showing instead of telling that even in the darkest of hours, we can still choose to be the light by using the darkness as fuel to keep going forward and become even greater than you were. But sometimes, you just can't let things go. The anti-hero has been, in my opinion, the most realistic portrayal of how humanity really acts. They try to do good, but they fail sometimes, and they do something that nobody can actually forgive. Anti-heroes like Deadpool, Wolverine, The Punisher, Elektra and Catwoman are often the most relatable characters due to their flawed nature. They are more complex to understand, and that gives the reader a sense of uncertainty and excitement, leading to more compelling stories than the classic good guy defeats bad guy narrative. This is not to say that those types of stories are inferior, but there's just something that anti-heroes tap into that makes for a far more interesting read or watch. Whether it be a philosophical exploration on morality, or narrative tension with other characters that disagree with the way that they operate, or it being a satisfying moment of revenge. This creates a feeling of catharsis, or a release of emotions that you dare not show the world due to societal limitations. All of these factors has led to my next point. Everyone loves to see the hero die. Whether they choose to admit it or not does not matter. But the death of a hero is what completes the legend. Whether it be a literal death, where the hero sacrifices himself in the pursuit of truth and justice, or it simply being the hero who retires by vanishing unexpectedly, leaving people to speculate. The legend of the hero is more powerful than a living hero, in my opinion. Why? because a living hero still gets judged for everything. A hero reveals people's insecurities. A hero exposes people's excuses and why they can't be more, why they choose to blend in instead of helping someone in need. And also, there's always been this fascinating thing that happens to a hero after a while, where people start to adapt to the idea of someone coming to save them. Some find this idea comforting and welcomes the new reality. Some finding disturbing or actively dislikes the idea that there might be someone watching them consistently, looking at all their actions, judging them. Some fear it, because if they try to commit crimes, they know there might be consequences. But very few are unaffected. That being said, something very strange happened in the late 2000s and early 2010s. The hero died. People started to become more cynical, more materialistic, less friendly. This is due to the rise of social media and global exposure of different ideas that previously was controlled by mainstream media. This also exposed a lot of real-life villains that thought themselves untouchable. How we got news also changed, with it previously only being 1 hour a day max, with some stories even running multiple days or weeks. It became a 24/7 flood of negativity. And this in turn made the world less receptive to the idea that anyone can be a hero, a symbol of perfection. Because now the world saw how imperfect it really is. The funny part is, heroes were never meant to be perfect. I think heroes were always meant to be a metaphor that even if you don't have everything in order, you can still change the world for the better. A perfect hero doesn't exist. That is what makes the idea so effective. To be a hero doesn't mean you have to smile all the time, or have high energy, or be in a good mood to do good. I think one of the reasons that kindness and trust has become less common over the years, and also the reasons why people keep being unpleasant or untrustworthy, is because it's what everyone does. And that's why now I have to speak about the James Gunn Superman movie. Don't worry, I won't spoil the movie if you haven't seen it already. But this movie reminded me of a lost feeling. A feeling of hope. I don't think it was hopeless, but I definitely think there was less hope. And this movie proved to me that you should try to improve someone else's day, even if it is a small gesture that costs nothing. Because of a world that's more connected than ever digitally, it's easy to forget that in reality the divide has never been wider. But it feels like things are starting to change, because in Superman, one of the major themes is punk rock, a anti-establishment genre of music established in the late 60s to early 70s. And it's a movement designed to be deliberately different from popular trends and behaviors. Now that description fits being kind and trusting people to a T these days. And don't get me wrong, don't just blindly trust people. First verify, then trust. At the end of the day, that is the essence of a hero. Someone who goes out of their way to bring peace to strangers. And that's why it's easy to be a villain, and it's hard to be a hero.